I'm not going to talk about the paddle wheels just yet. I'm going to touch briefly on these rocket pods and the sides. A little bit of decoration. Again, they would have been individualized a lot more if I'd had a chance, but this is the first weapon system put together and finalized for the Phorcys. Even before these cram turrets, which were installed very early on, I was already playing with the rockets before I started installing those crams. But these things are kind of separated. Let's get on here and see if I can show you. No, I don't want that. P. So yeah, as you can see, these are two-stage to make sure that these things can angle up and down a bit towards the targets. I'm not sure why something sounded just there, but yeah. The first one houses the turret control and has ready access, and then it has these housing parts going up the sides of it for the metal, and then we have the secondary turret, the vertical orientation turret, attached to a mostly flat system in the middle. There is some armoring above and below attached to it, but the thing is, this thing is not really intended to go beyond maybe a 20 to 30 degree angle. So it's not going to point up at any aircraft, so that's why it can get away with having a little bit of stuff behind it. It won't impact it, it can still angle a little bit. I just wish these extra missile components could actually function as a connector. That would make missile systems easier to condense down a bit, but I can understand why they're not. I don't know. Maybe I could have fitted it off to the side. Who knows? But yeah, these things are... This is the system for the HE ones. They are a bit heavier than the other type, but that also means there's less of them in the launcher, as you'll see in a few moments. But plenty of explosive, 1,600 damage, and it flies at just over 400 meters per second, so it's pretty quick, pretty small, pretty cheap, delivers a fair punch. Limited range on it though. I mean, it only flies for about 1 kilometer and a bit, maybe 1.2, 1.3 kilometers at most, before its fuel runs out. But this is a rapid fire pod intended to just lock on and go daka 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 daka, boom, you're dead kind of thing. And I don't know why I hit P there, because I'm moving on to the other turret type, which is this one, its companion, its sister turret, which is, as you can see, it's got the same base part, but it is built instead in the stacked arrangement. So it carries 2 sets of frag missiles instead. So here's the build on that. Same range, they're slightly faster, and they carry frags. It does 11 fragments of just over 1,000 damage each. So this is more condensed kinetic kind of damage, more specific rather than general area kind of thing. One thing I would like to note as well, by the way, is the fact that I have reversed these turrets as well for the other side of the ship. So you see where the elevation turret is? This thing is meant to be angled towards or to the side, so that's why the armor is on the forward facing side on this, just to try and resist incoming damage that comes in from that general direction when the missile pod isn't turned. And it's the opposite on the other side of the ship. So as you can see, there is the elevation turret. The one interesting note of these things is I was deliberately testing these systems against the Kingstead, because I assumed that the level of armoring I wanted the weapons on this Phorcys to be able to readily damage was I was expecting 1 to 3 meter thick metal in an individual layer of armor, roughly. So that's what the kind of thing I was testing these things against, and these things can shred through 1 to 2 meters of metal pretty quickly. But an especially interesting thing I found is 2 of these turrets, 1 kinetic and 1 explosive. If you point them at a Kingstead's general AI area, they can kill it in 2 to 2.5 salvos of rockets. And that is from a 45-degree angle of attack. So it's not directly from the side, but 45-degree angle, so it's going through multiple walls of metal there, and other components and weapon systems, and these rocket pods just chewed straight through it. So when these things are actually hitting, they can deal a lot of damage very quickly to things like turret systems, to sensor systems, to thinner sections of armoring. You'd need a fair bit of armor to resist a concentrated attack from these things for very long. And that's why there's multiple batteries. I mean, one of these things is only like 500 resources more expensive than one of these dual 150 casemates. So that's like just over 4,000 resources to build one of these rocket pods. And for the investments, yeah, they're more fragile than the casemates, but they dish out a lot more firepower. So yeah, I'm very happy with those things. Yeah, moving on. The last general thing, I think, is going to be the paddle wheels. Dama mentioned this in his video, but yeah, the rules of the tournament said no spin block stacking for performance purposes to aid the ship, but these things are paddle wheels, you know, they're motive, and so Dama and I talked about it. And what we decided was, yes, they are paddle wheels, and all this does is condense the location. So it's like they're all together. It's nothing like as egregious as, say, spin block stacking for propulsion. Sorry, not spin block, deadly blade stacking. Sorry. That's its own approach to gaming the system. But this is just let me condense them down into proper Victorian style paddle wheels. But I was fully expecting these things like get a direct hit on the center here, it'll blow the entire paddle wheel off, and it'll be rendered completely useless. That kind of thing. Testing actually gave me some interesting results on this kind of arrangement, which I will mention in a moment. But yeah, I was just trying to get like many paddles work together because I didn't want just like 4 paddles or something like that. That's why I spin blocks. Each spin block at 22.5 degrees. And there's 4 spin blocks in total. The base one controls rotation, the other 3 just angle the paddles to get them around this shape. And then I use mimics to get pieces around it. Like that bit there is a suppression, is a recoil suppressor from a cram cannon. This bit here is a muzzle brake from the APS system, this set of rings in the middle here. And then this outer part here is a couple of mimics set to take a custom jet engine's compressor stage and condense it down, because many of the custom jet parts are hollow. So they're great for a ring application like this. Just if you're curious, that kind of thing. The muzzle section is not actually hollow. There is actually a solid piece at the back there, but because of how I've arranged it, it's not readily visible. But yeah, moving on. I was so paranoid about this thing getting snapped off easily. You can see what I did here. The spin blocks are all down here within the vehicle itself. Let's see if I can get a good view with P. P? Yes, here we go. Yeah. So as you can see, like this is what it round up with. It actually looks very pretty when you look at it like this, I think. It looks very, very pretty, the sheer arrangement you can get with these things. But yeah, there's the 4 spin blocks going into this protective sheath of metal. And then up here there's another 4 meters of separation between the spin blocks themselves and the outer hub. When the Phorcys was half built, these 2 paddles alone could get this thing up to like 17 to 18 meters per second. But the craft was a lot lighter back then, so yeah, it's gotten a lot heavier since, unfortunately. But yeah, this is what I did to it. And then another interesting feature is I use ACBs on local spin controller. One feature that ACBs can do, which was added at some point, I don't know when, is they can target a spin block which is only set to rotation mode. So if they're set to angle mode, the ACB can be told to ignore that, which is very handy. And so that controls it. If there's a forward command from the AI, then it sets the spin block to start spinning, and off it goes. And you can just see how it's arranged like that. Look at it looks pretty exploded like that, I think. Anyway, yeah, moving on. Another interesting facet, which I would not honestly recommend duplicating that much, is this. A turret base. And you can see very clearly from this, but I am addressing that now. I experimented with this as a means to try and protect the paddle wheels a bit more. The entire thing is angled. Only at 10 degrees, but it's angled. So it's wider at the... It's further out at the base, and it's angling inwards towards the superstructure of the ship as it gets higher. So that was another experiment I did with these things. With my first generation paddle wheels. It's very interesting, and it does help protect it a little bit. It helps to shelter it in a little bit more regarding the ship armor, as you can see. But the problem is, angled like this, the game doesn't quite know what to do with it. As they enter the water, they're actually generating turning force. So it's more forces, it's more calculations the game has to do for where the hell the ship's actually trying to go. When they're down flat like this, then they're flat, and it's just forward propulsion. But then as they start to swing upwards again, the angle increases, and they start to provide turning force again in the opposite direction. So it dilutes the effectiveness of the paddle wheel. It makes it harder for your computer. It has definite drawbacks. It looks pretty, but it has definite drawbacks. So when this ship was barely reaching 8 meters per second on those paddle wheels, that's when I did this. I installed the last feature of this ship that we will be covering, the primary paddle wheel, because I also want to experiment with a centrally mounted paddle wheel as well. So as you can see, this thing is like about somewhere between 2 and 3 times the paddle coverage. The paddles are actually longer as well, so it digs deeper into the water. Again, I used like the spin blocks setup, though this time all of them were like either the recoil suppressor or the custom jet controller piece. And I also tunneled some little gaps into them as well, just to improve the look of it, and I made sure it wasn't just like a flat blank slate of paddle wheel. So yeah. It's also really effective as well. I was surprised when Damaddok did his live stream inspection and this ship reached 19 meters per second, because I'd literally never seen the craft go that fast. And you can blame the steering system for that, by the way. With the AI in control, the steering system is constantly working, and that is constantly producing extra drag on the ship. So yeah, that's why it was moving faster than I'd ever seen it or even knew it could do when Damaddok told it to go forward, because while he was doing forward, the AI was not doing anything. So the AI was not trying to turn, so there was no drag from the turning system. That's what happened there. Anyway, moving on. Same kind of thing. This has got the 4 spin blocks, but they are mounted in the center here, off center slightly. Let's bring up P again. Yeah, they are off-centered slightly, just because I wanted to get like them spaced along the middle bit here, so you got to get to the middle to disable it. And then another interesting little tidbit is I kind of went with this hollow arrangement here. So the metal on the actual spin blocks themselves is hollow, and then I reinforced it with some metal at either end, and it's actually mounted on 4 lines of light blocks going along the entire length of the craft. But I could have filled in a lot of this center gap with other pieces like metal to make it thicker, mounted on the ship itself, since it's basically hollow, except for that little plug bit there. But I also use this to house the controlling ACBs as well. So there's the stop ACB, the forward ACB. Since these are prototype paddle wheels, I forgot to install the reverse function, I fully admit, but I never wanted the ship to go in reverse in the first place, so I didn't care when I realised, basically. But when Damaddok pointed out the fact the ship can actually go faster than it's supposed to in this tournament, I also included this one here, a third spin block. Sorry, a third ACB to control the spin blocks. And this one is set so that if the craft goes above a certain speed, it will actually prioritise and bring this particular paddle wheel to a dead halt. Not only does that deny the craft the motive force of this spin block turning, it also acts as a brake as well. So this paddle wheel is the reason why this ship goes faster than the tournament speed limits allows. and with this ACB, it also ensures that the craft cannot go above those same speed limits. So it's a very useful dual function actually of a paddle wheel. Immediate stopping force if you want your ship to stop really fast. This ship stops honestly faster than any kind of propeller-based craft I've made, because it just has built-in brakes, basically. It's just very, very handy. Hey there. And that brings us to the end of this. I think it's going to be at least 2 videos, this actually. It's pretty long. But hey, more content for you guys. And I'm fine with that. I've talked about the Phorcys, I've covered all the design features in it. I've touched on what I intended for it. And that kind of thing. So, yeah. The last thing I will mention, by the way, is that it had 9 AIs. That's because it was intended to like have scattered firepower, saturate the entire target of the ship. There was 1 AI controlling the crams, there was 1 controlling the anti-aircraft guns, there was 2 controlling the missile pods, because different AIs, different aim points. I wanted them aiming at different spots on the ship so that the missiles would be scattering all over the darn place. Just to ensure that they kill those pesky turrets and sensors and things. Sure, it'll be slow to kill the ship, but it'll be faster in defanging it and taking out its weapons and ability to see and stuff like that. And then there was localized weapon AIs as well. There was 1 AI for the casemates guns down there. There was 1 AI for the first set of casemates up here. There was 1 AI for the set of casemates up here. There was 1 AI for the dorsal missile pod in the smokestacks. There was an AI underneath which handled the sonar and torpedoes. So yeah, it was like AIs, and they were all named after the offspring of Phorcys as well, just for a bit of extra thematics. Sadly, Damaddok took exception to that, and fully 6 AIs were stripped out of the Phorcys itself. The Seto, though, still has an AI, which I've just realised I have not actually talked about this entire time. The Seto, this is named after Phorcys' wife, actually. So, companion kind of thing. And it is the spotter plane. It is fully driven by Deddy blades and spin block rotors, as you can see. The most interesting feature is the rear section here, which is, as you can see, counter-rotating ones. That was a pain to set up, by the way. The FTD didn't want to play nice with that. I had to monkey around with it for quite a while. And then it continues upwards, just maintaining again that steampunk kind of styling. Moving forward, we've got the ACBs, we've got the AI, we've got different parts. Let's check its fuel states really quick. Do you have fuel? You don't, you burned through it all already. Because we've been talking for over an hour, this thing has fuel for 12 minutes. Well, while it's docked, the Phorcys can actually refuel it, so. There we go, that'll do it. When this thing runs out of fuel, by the way, it's actually not powerful enough to fly because the rotors, they're not big enough and powerful enough to do that. I would have done some spin block stacking actually to increase the density of the rotors. Or make them larger, but they were then limited by the fact I didn't want them so big that the craft wouldn't really reasonably fit down into its docking housing down here, since it's meant to get all the way back here, remember. So I was stuck on size for this thing. Anyway, I've got to disable the systems to get it to fly upwards, and then we'll have to F11 to catch it. So here's the spawner, here's the tractor, and here's the controlling ACBs, which will dictate if it's released or not. I need to kill this particular ACB. And then I can safely undock it and the systems won't try to drag it back. Let the game figure out what's going on. Off it goes. Whee! Bye-bye! So yeah, that releases as soon as there's an enemy presence detected. When there's no enemy presence, it kind of doesn't know what it's doing. I admit. So it's a bit struggles a bit when there's no enemy present, but when there is an enemy present, it controls fairly well. But yeah, as you can see, it's like I built this metal blade into it, like a center line of reinforcement, but it's almost entirely wood and mimic. some parts of the ship could be held together by mimics alone if an explosion knocks out some of the wood beams. So that's how many mimics I installed in this darn thing. But yeah, it's like piping. There's things that these particular things are mimicked on as well to provide a housing for the pitch control Daddy blades in the front there, as you can see. There sits an onboard sensor suite. This thing actually has, I think it's like four sensor systems on it, if I recall correctly. So this thing is actually very good at spotting. The AI is just housed in this bit here. Yep, there's a wireless snooper in the top there. Actually, let's get it on here and Shift P so you can see a bit better, but the mimics aren't affected by Shift P. But yeah, that's the AI core. Yeah, it's 5 separate sensor systems on here, so it's got a lot of detection power on it. And then the intra-vehicle transmitter sends that all back to the Phorcys itself to share its targeting data. But yeah, 90 degree radar, wireless snooper, 360 camera, gimbal camera, laser rangefinder. As you can see, there's actually a local weapon control down there, and that's because this is actually turret mounted. So this entire thing will spin to either side to orient itself towards whatever this craft is circling around. That's kind of what it does, really. It's not coming back. There we go, it's because the game was paused. Right. Moving back from here, we've got the central lift Daddy blade. I was originally thinking of maybe doing this as like a winged-based version, but no, it wasn't working properly, so Daddy blade for lift. Underneath we have another Daddy blade, which I was very careful to mimic block in so you can see how it's mounted. But that is a Daddy blade just like on its side down there, attached to the supporting frame, which goes into the central underside equipment there. And a little bit of forward protection / streamlining to make sure that the craft speed isn't that affected. This craft is really fast, by the way. It does like it usually does between 65 and 70 meters per second, so it's pretty good in terms of scouting. There's the wings that have unfurled. I kind of want this to have like an aggressive dagger-like profile, so it looks a bit like a shiv or what was that thing? Poignard, I think it was, the 3-pronged one. It looks like a bit like a weapon, honestly. So kind of a very aerodynamic, aggressive profile. Though these sails here are purely for looks. They don't really. They're too small and they're not angled properly, so they don't really contribute anything to this craft, if I'm going to be honest. Except maybe a little bit of drag sometimes when it's turning, but who knows? I don't. Behind that, we caught the doubled up rotor blades, as you can see here, with the up paddles on the back, so the rudders. That's for looks, really. The rudders don't actually contribute anything while it's in the air. And when it's in the water, they don't contribute anything either, because, because they're very small, honestly, compared to the rest of the thing. And this light block attached, by the way, between there. So it's got some light blocks running in between. Yeah, you can just see a light block there. And then there's metal housings on either side where the spin block's located. And then we move back here to what looks like an exhaust area / flame area. So that's kind of, yeah. The thing is, it's so fast that the particles spread out a lot. But it's got fire at the back and smoke coming up above and below. And as you saw there, there's also like some aircraft rudder parts and things in here as well. So this thing also uses it turns using aircraft rudders. Its roll control is via aircraft ailerons. Its roll is also via this underside mounted Daddy blade as well. But yeah, it's a mix between a Daddy blade craft and a aircraft. However, it has no real durability. If it takes a serious hit, it is going to fall out of the sky like a stone. And that is entirely deliberate. This thing is really cheap. I mean, if I call it up, look at that. It's just over 3,000 resources, nearly 3,100 resources. And for that, you get a really fast platform housing a lot of sensor equipment. So it's a good scout, but it's not going to last beyond that. And tournament rules forbade any kind of weapon systems on a scout plane. It's meant more to provide an extra frame of reference for the Phorcys itself to aim its weapons. Though of note, it's also very fuel hungry. There is an engine mounted back here, as you can see. This thing is running at full power on these rear blades because of the size restriction on them. And that is why it's got really bad fuel efficiency, and it will run out of fuel before too long. Without fuel, it just can't fly. But yeah, that is the Seto. And very sleek little scout craft. And I think is that everything? Let's see, I've covered the AIs, I've covered every section by section, I've covered the scout craft, I've covered the design philosophy and what are plans. Yeah, I think that actually covers the Phorcys in its entirety. I thought I'd be done. I was hoping to be done with explaining this craft in half an hour-ish, and I think I've got maybe 3 videos at this point. I think I've been talking for nearly an hour and a half now, just going over this design bit by bit. But yeah. Oh dear. And the Seto just flies off into the distance because it doesn't know what to do. Bye, Seto. Just disappears into the horizon. But yeah. This has been Iron Mark 3. Thank you all very much for watching, if you stuck with me this far. I hope you guys enjoyed the show and this little walk around looking at the Phorcys. And I hope you enjoyed it. I mean, people on the Discord will have known this if they were reading my channel. But it's also kind of inspired me to try and do a little bit here. I mean, this is the current prototype. Just as a last little sneak peek before we go. This is not finished by any means, but the Phorcys is too big, too complex, too laggy for my computer to readily handle it too much, so I don't know. But it has set me on developing some new vehicles in Formula Depth, so this is something you might see later. Just a new little craft based on the same design principles as the Phorcys. Just in a much more manageable scale. I must say, I never thought I would start building paddle boats in this game. I always liked metal-hulled things, but yeah, something's happening. But until next time, see you all later. Wait. No. Don't worry, this is going to take another minute or so. I forgot something. I knew this was going to happen. I knew I was going to forget something, but yeah, I've remembered. Right. There is 2 other little design quirks I absolutely forgot about while talking about the craft for... I checked and it was about an hour and a half straight. But there's a couple of little quirks to this design still that I forgot to mention. First off, something that was pointed out in the stream by Dama, and I actually joined the stream and clarified last week. The Phorcys actually has no material storage at all. That's because that was very deliberate. I didn't want to add material storage to the price on the ship. The ship is also so big it doesn't have repair bots either, so it can't do self-repair. It is built to endure, but repair. The tournament limited it to 5 repair drones only, and given the bulk of this ship, repair bots would just they'd just fix random bits of hull, which would not be very useful at all. If you could prioritize the repair bots, then it would be a different story, but you can't. So yeah, no repair bots in this thing. Instead, it has a massive ammo storage, as you can see there. 240k to start out. Down to 216.5 because that was providing the initial load for all the weaponry. But even then, it still has enough ammunition to fight, firing all the weapons at a single target for 12 minutes roughly before it runs out of ammunition. So this thing actually has substantial endurance in a fight, and within the rules of the tournament, which is capped at 10-minute fights, it has more than enough ammo to blow its way through for as long as it survives. So yeah. In fact, as the fight goes on, it'll care less if you actually manage to breach its ammo containment areas, because, hey, if it's half empty when the ammo storage goes boom, the ammo transfers to another ammo storage, so yeah. it actually gets harder to knock out the weapons as the fight goes on, in terms of blowing up all the ammo supplies, I mean. Right. The other thing moving on, which is the only other point I wanted to add this extra bit onto the end for, completely by accident, this craft has 0 engine power. Yeah, this craft does not require any kind of mechanical power source to operate. So that's why it's the first vehicle I've ever built, really, definitely in this size, which doesn't actually have an engine. The paddles can propel it to the levels required by the tournament just on basic spin block force alone. There's no need for an engine power augment. So in itself, the Phorcys doesn't require any kind of fuel or anything like that. It just requires fuel for the scout plane, and that's it. So yeah, 2 interesting little tidbits about the design for you. And yes, I don't know how fast the Phorcys would go if I actually juiced up the paddle wheels. They're set to like 22, 23 RPM right now. So I could increase the power of the paddles by roughly another third. And then I could apply the engine power on top of that. So I don't know how fast this thing would go if I did that. I'm not sure what would happen if I did that. But yeah. 2 interesting little tidbits. And with that, yes, this walkover of the design is absolutely done. Once again, see you all later. Wait, what's this? We are still not done. I know, a second bit and a third goodbye added after the original supposed ending of the video. Right, this is just going to be a few minutes more again. And this one is also recorded later, like a few days later. I recorded all 3 parts in one go. But this one is being added after the second part went out, and a special shout out to NZ Johnson, who said, "Can't wait to see this in combat. Will we see some of that in part 3? You will see a little bit of that, but not from me at this moment. Partly due to time when I'm recording this and editing it ready for when it goes out today. And partly because there has already been a fight featuring the Phorcys in the tournament that I mentioned this particular craft was intended to fight in. Damaddok has done his first round. It went out a few days back. And it was the Phorcys versus this, Cogula's Nolaru. And this hopefully gives you an idea of the scale difference between the Phorcys and a more conventionally designed craft in the terms of From the Depths of Wisdom. Though again, Nolaru is specially built for this particular tournament, and there's a lot of features that may or may not be standard to the class. I don't know. All I know is Cogula's been building and editing this ship for a long time, so I'm not certain about this particular iteration, but the Nolaru is an equivalent cost vessel, battleship, heavy metal plates, lots of side-mounted weapons and turret weapons, and the Phorcys was pitted head-to-head against this in the first round of Damaddok's tournament. I'll be putting a link to that down in the description, along with, well, it'll be showing in the background now, actually, that I've taken some excerpts from that particular fight just to show some of the combat going on there. But I will also mention that between that fight and the fact that some people seem to like this design and find it interesting, I'm seriously thinking about continuing development on it and fixing some things on it, like the paddle wheels, finishing up the decoration, actually painting the darn thing, you know, that kind of stuff. And just continue on with a second iteration of it rather than just a spin-off in vehicle design. In particular, though, I'm kind of curious because mentioned after the fact of those rounds and tournaments, The Nalaru's APS are misconfigured, and that's being blamed in part for its defeat. I'm not sure about what would happen, who knows, but the main APS guns are indeed set to a pen depth of 30, which is, well, even Coglu himself doesn't know why that was set. He's confused too. And 30, there's not many ships that are 30 meters across. You know, it's like, why? I don't understand it. So what I'm thinking of doing now is I'll take the Nalaru, I'll fix its APS shells. And Coglu also mentioned there might be a problem with the side cannons, so I'll have a look at those and see if there's any other faults I can find with it. And I'll also take the Phorcys, I'll fix some faulty ATBs in its turning system, and I will monkey with the AI settings, which is something I'm quite dissatisfied with after the initial tournament performance. And maybe I'll pitch these two against each other in a fight of my own. And we'll see what would happen if we'd both had a quick tinkering pass to change some settings within the crafts. Just for curiosity's sake, because I really want to know how that would have affected the fight. Though, that said, a lot of the shells from the main cannons did not pass straight through my ship. I want to clarify that one. They did not. They impacted on actual armoured sections, and they were blowing big holes out of the side of the ship. There is some clear battle damage on the Phorcys in the actual tournament footage. But yeah, with that, and with a quick show of a fight, and a link to 2 proper bouts between this and an equivalent priced battleship, there we go. And for the third and final time, because this is going to be the final addition to part 3, which has probably pushed it up past 40 minutes. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you all some other time. Maybe with some more Phorcys, maybe not. We'll have to see. Later.